You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans! Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am Jacob Valk, and just as I was getting ready to publish yesterday's show, the news broke that Tony La Russa was hired as White Sox manager. Now, in all fairness to me, I didn't see it until after I published yesterday's show. But if I had seen it before I published yesterday's show, I would have recorded something about it. I mean, this is a stunning hire. Make no mistake about it. Was it rumored that La Russa had interest in the job and Jerry Reinsdorf wanted to bring him back? The answer is yes. But I don't think anyone knew how serious it was. Tony La Russa hasn't been a major league manager since 2011. And he went out on top. He won a World Series. I'm pretty sure he's the only manager in baseball history to retire right after winning a World Series. I mean, the guy went out on top, make no mistake about it. He rode that success into Cooperstown. He's won 3 World Series, 4 Manager of the Year awards, 6 pennants, and he's behind only Connie Mack and John McGraw in terms of most wins ever by a major league manager. He is without question one of the greatest managers in baseball history. And you'd think, because we're both old school baseball minds, that I'd be really happy about this hire. This is a guy who gets it. He knows how to manage the game the right way. He knows how to win. You couldn't script it any better. Well, you'd be wrong. I like this hire, but I don't love it. There are a lot of issues here. Firstly, this was a Jerry Reinsdorf move. This wasn't a Rick Hahn move. Reinsdorf, the owner, wanted La Russa. Rick Hahn didn't. I don't know who Hahn wanted, but it wasn't La Russa. La Russa and Reinsdorf have a great relationship. La Russa used to manage the White Sox from 1979 to 1986. In fact, La Russa has managed 3 teams: the White Sox, the Athletics, and the Cardinals. Of those 3, he's won a World Series with every team except the White Sox. That is a great regret that Reinsdorf has, letting La Russa get away. He let him go to Oakland, and very quickly, he turned that team around. La Russa was fired midway through the 1986 season by the White Sox. Very quickly, the Athletics scooped him up. In 1988, they won the pennant. They lost to the Dodgers in the World Series. The year after that, they won the World Series, beating the Giants in the Bay Area series that was famous because of the big earthquake, the day the series stood still. And the year after that, they won the pennant again, but they got swept by the Reds. So Tony La Russa won 3 straight pennants with the Athletics. The White Sox weren't anywhere close to him. Their managers were guys like Jeff Torborg and Gene Lamont and Jerry Manuel and Terry Bevington. No Hall of Famers there. Jim Fregosi also. No, that doesn't work. It is a big regret that Reinsdorf has in letting La Russa get away. Reinsdorf is a loyal guy. But I don't like it when the owner meddles like this. You have to trust Rick Hahn to get this hire right. If he didn't want La Russa, if he wanted someone else, that's what you're paying him for. Is Tony La Russa a better manager than the reported finalists, A.J. Hinch and Alex Cora? The answer is yes. No one is debating Tony La Russa's qualifications, but the fit is really concerning. La Russa's 76 years old. The White Sox have a very young core. Yon Moncada, Eloy Jimenez, Luis Robert, Lucas Giolito, Tim Anderson. The main reason, supposedly, that Hahn didn't want La Russa was that he was concerned about how La Russa would be able to relate to this young core that the White Sox have. If La Russa was gonna come back, you wouldn't think he'd go to a young team. You'd think he'd go to a veteran team. A team like the Astros or the Yankees. A team that's ready to win right now. La Russa doesn't like bat flips. He went off on Fernando Tatis for the bat flip that he did after the Grand Slam on 3-0. Tim Anderson is a guy who likes to flip the bat after he hits a home run. I don't see that working well. La Russa is going to need to alter his approach a little bit. But, having said that, the players also are going to need to realize that this is a Hall of Famer. Not a future Hall of Famer. An actual Hall of Famer. He went in 2014. He's only 35 wins behind John McGraw for the second most wins by an MLB manager in history. He will break that this year. Assuming there's a full season, he's going to break that. No one's catching Connie Mack. Mack is at 37.31, McGraw's at 27.63, La Russa is at 27.28. No one is catching Connie Mack. To put that in perspective, excluding La Russa, the active manager who's closest to Mack is Dusty Baker at 1892. He would need to win 2,000 more games. He's not even halfway there. And Baker's been managing for 23 years. You should respect La Russa's greatness. And it's not like it's ancient history watching La Russa manage. I remember the 2011 World Series. That was a really good World Series, a really underrated World Series. It went 7 games. David Freese was incredible. Game 6, he hits the walk-off home run to send the series to a Game 7. The bottom of the 9th, the Cardinals are down by 2. They tie the game late. The Rangers score 2 in the top of the 10th. The Cardinals tie it up. And then they win it in the 11th. They were a team of destiny. You don't have to be a huge student of baseball history to appreciate Tony La Russa. 10 years is not ancient history. 2021 is when La Russa's going to take over. So 2011, that's 10 years. Not a long time. Hopefully the veterans on the team, the guys like Keuchel and Gio Gonzalez, Alex Colomé, Jose Abreu, Edwin Encarnacion, would say to the young guns, hey, this guy deserves your respect. I'm not saying there's gonna be a conflict between the younger players and La Russa, but it is a concern. There's an over 50-year gap in age between guys like Jimenez, Dylan Cease, and Cody Hewer, and La Russa. In the NFL, the old school coaches really don't work anymore. Joe Judge is on his way to crashing and burning with the Giants. Tom Coughlin saw his time in Jacksonville come to a really bad end. This year, the Patriots are garbage. These old school minds are failing. Do I think La Russa can work? The answer is yes. Rick Hahn said that he wanted a manager with championship experience. So everyone keyed in on Hinch and Cora as being the guys who he'd go after. He was 100% right to want a manager with championship experience. The White Sox are ready to take that next step. I thought they were better than the Athletics. They lost to them in the wild card round. They did need someone to help get them over the hump. There are some people who say there isn't such a thing as Phase 1 and Phase 2 managers and coaches. No, there is. There are guys who build the foundation, and then there are guys that get you over the top. La Russa can get the White Sox over the top. He's proven that he can win World Series. 89, 06, and 11. And La Russa is a brilliant baseball mind. He just is. You want to disagree with some of the things he does and some of the things he says? You can. But having said that, this guy has forgotten more about baseball than most of us will ever know in a lifetime. I mean, La Russa was most recently with the Diamondbacks, and he was dreadful there. The Dansby Swanson for Shelby Miller trade is one of the worst trades in recent baseball history. It was killed at the time, and it's looked even worse now. But having said that, there's a difference between being a GM and being a manager. I think La Russa can get the White Sox over the top. Does this instantly make them a World Series contender? The answer is no, but it really helps. I don't think they're better than the Rays. I don't think they're better than the Yankees. I'll tell you, it's close between them and the Astros. The Astros didn't impress me. You can make the argument that the White Sox are the third best team in the American League now because of this hire. But at the end of the day, it's up to the players to realize that La Russa is a great baseball mind and he should be respected. There is the concern for conflict. No question. I'm not saying definitively that it's going to happen, but it is a concern. I brought up AJ Hinch a little earlier. He's gonna go to the AL Central, specifically the Detroit Tigers. Multiple reports are saying that Hinch is really close to signing a 3-year deal with the Tigers to be their manager. Hinch's suspension ended right after the last out of the World Series. You want to talk about a fall from grace? You go from managing the Houston Astros to the Detroit Tigers. It doesn't get much worse than that. The Tigers have a long road ahead of them to be relevant. I mean, I'm looking at their roster. I'm trying to think who on that team I think can be a big part of a World Series run. Jeimer Candelario? Maybe. Daz Cameron? He's got to show that he can produce in the majors. Same thing with a guy like Isaac Paredes. Same thing with a guy like Casey Mize. I don't like Matthew Boyd. The Tigers have one of the worst rosters in all of baseball. The fall from grace is incredible. It would be the equivalent of Nick Saban leaving Alabama and going to Grand Valley State. Shout out to the Lakers. Look, this isn't a bad hire for the Tigers. It's a great one. Al Avila did the right thing in getting a manager in here with World Series experience. I understand the whole sign stealing thing, but the simple fact is the guy does have a ring. Alright, I don't think that World Series has an asterisk on it. You don't know how much it really helped them, the sign stealing. The Astros have fantastic players. I don't think they really needed to steal signs. Now, obviously, there are people saying that Hinch shouldn't be back in baseball. Look at what he did. He embarrassed the sport. All that stuff. In everything that's come out, Hinch has come off to me as just an absentee leader. Not a ringleader, of what was happening, but he wasn't doing anything to really stop it. Should Hinch have stopped it? The answer is yes. He's the manager. But he wasn't the big bad wolf in this whole thing. God only knows why the incredibly dumb Rob Manfred went after Hinch and Luhnow as opposed to the players. Stupid is as stupid does, I guess. Look, I believe that everyone in life deserves a second chance. I understand there are some things that are unforgivable, but this isn't one of them. This guy should have done more to stop it. He said as much in interviews. But again, he's not the ultimate villain in this. The ultimate villain is guys like Beltran and Correa and Altuve and Bregman, the players, not the manager. I believe that making it happen is worse than letting it happen. I mean, ultimately, Hinch paid his debt to the sport. He sat out a year. The Astros had a great chance to win a World Series. They took the Rays to a 7th game in the ALCS. If Hinch is there, maybe, just maybe, he can get them over the top. He's a better postseason manager than Dusty Baker. All in all, this guy deserved a second chance. He didn't commit bloody murder or anything like that. He just let the sign stealing happen. He knows now that he needs to lead with a little bit more of an iron fist. Don't let the players run amok. And be firm in making what you want to have happen. Smashing some monitors isn't enough. You've got to do more. And this is a great move for the Tigers. They get a manager in who's won a World Series. He's really young. The Tigers are in for a really long rebuild. This is going to be a 5 to maybe 7 year project. I'm not saying Hinch is going to be there for all 5 to 7 years, but he can lay the groundwork for another Tigers World Series run. Moving on now to a team that was screwed over because of the Astros sign stealing. My beloved New York Yankees. They made a few decisions on some team options that they had. Zach Britton is going to stay in the fold, but J. Happ and Brett Gardner aren't. Now, the interesting note about the Britton option is that option wasn't for 2021. That option was for 2022. So the Yankees had to decide now, because of the contract that Scott Boras negotiated, whether they wanted to keep Britton around for the next 2 seasons. That's a great job by Boras, I'll tell you that. You may not like Boras, but you've got to respect him. The guy's a fantastic advocate for his clients. It's the right decision for the Yankees to exercise Britton's option. Britton was the best reliever the Yankees had last year. In his 2 full seasons with the Yankees, he's had an under 2 ERA. It's very possible that Britton ends up closing games for him next year God only knows what's going to happen with Aroldis Chapman. He can regress. Maybe the Yankees look to trade him. Maybe in the playoffs the Yankees go to Britain because Chapman has proven that he just can't get it done. The Yankees had to keep Britain around. It's just that simple. Good job by them in picking up his $14 million option for 2022. And one other thing that I just noticed, if the Yankees had declined that option, Britain could have opted out of his contract and become a free agent immediately. So it was either Britain becomes a free agent immediately, Britain can say, you know what, I'm going to stick with the Yankees for 2021, and then that's it. Or the Yankees can say, you know what, we want you around for 2 years. The Yankees couldn't kick this can down the road. The Yankees did the right thing here, but again, that's a fantastic job by Scott Boras. Happ and Gardner are pretty easy decisions also. J. Happ was due $17 million. He said some things that ticked some people off. He intimated that he thought the Yankees were limiting his workload so that his 2021 team option wouldn't vest. And in the playoffs, he was openly critical after Game 2 of the Rays series, that whole debacle. But limiting his workload, he had no right to be upset over. Happ was garbage, and then he turned it around pretty quickly. It was a really impressive turnaround. Give Happ credit, but at the time he said it, he really should have kept his mouth shut. And I agree with him that Game 2 was a horror show, and Aaron Boone and Brian Cashman should be ashamed of themselves for coming up with that incredibly stupid idea. But it's not a good look for Happ to publicly criticize it. Say it after the series. Don't say it during. That's not a good look. Saying it after isn't a great look either, but it's better. 17 mil is a lot of money. Happ didn't deserve it. There will be a team that brings him in. The guy went 2-2 last year with a 3.47 ERA. If you want a lefty veteran innings eater, you can't do much better than J. Happ. It wouldn't surprise me if he got another big contract. I never liked the contract the Yankees gave him. I was never crazy about that trade in the first place. I thought Happ was incredibly overrated. Had a good finish to the 2018 regular season, but did nothing against the Red Sox in the playoffs. 2019 he was dreadful, and last year he said some things he shouldn't have. Good riddance. Gardner's a little tougher, but it was still the right decision. When you're done, you're done, and I think it's been evident for a while that Gardner just doesn't have it anymore. Look, in 2019, he put together that crazy 28 home run season. God only knows what got into him, but that was incredible. But in 2018, he only hit 236. Last year, he only hit 223. He didn't do much with his legs. He's a good fielder. He's a good player. I like Brett Gardner. You're allowed to not like his production, but in terms of the type of player he is, locker room leader, not afraid to get a little animated, went out there and did his job every day, you can win with Brett Gardner. It's a shame that he only has the one World Series. It really is. When you think about the type of player he was, you want him to have more. I like Gardner a lot. Wish him nothing but the best. If the Yankees wanted to bring him back on a cheaper deal, you can. They will have a hole at the back end of their bench. If they follow my plan of bringing in Kevin Pillar and Tommy La Stella that I outlined in my 2020 Yankees offseason preview, there is a hole there that I had Tyler Wade or Tyro Estrada filling as a guy who can come off the bench in pinch running situations. Gardner can do that, but he's going to need to sign a cheap deal. I wouldn't be opposed to the Yankees bringing him back, but he just can't take that many at-bats anymore. He just doesn't have it anymore. Moving on now to a really stunning decision by the Cleveland Indians. They placed Brad Hand on outright waivers. So basically what they're doing is, instead of just declining his option, he had a $10 million option with a $1 million buyout. Instead of just buying him out and spending the $1 million, they're putting him on waivers so that another team can pay him the $10 million in 2021. I don't begrudge the Indians for getting rid of him this way. It's actually kind of smart. If you have the opportunity to possibly save $1 million, take it. But this is Brad Hand we're talking about. Forget $1 million. Pay him his $10 million. This guy was insane last year. He went 2-1 with a 2.05 ERA. He led the majors with 16 saves. The year before, he had 34 saves. The year before that, 32. The year before that, 21. He made his first All-Star team. I understand that he hasn't gotten it done in the playoffs. I get that. That's a bad look. But you have to keep this guy around. The Cleveland Indians are not going to go on a big playoff run anytime soon. They gave away Corey Kluber. They traded Mike Clevinger. God only knows what's going to happen with Zach Plesac. Their lineup is dreadful outside of Ramirez and Lindor. Maybe Cesar Hernandez. And maybe Franmil Reyes. No one in that lineup scares me. Don't worry about playoff success now. What the hell's wrong with you? What are the Indians doing? This makes 0 sense. If you think Brad Hand has value, why wouldn't you exercise the option and then try to trade him at the winter meetings? There are a bunch of teams that could use a guy like Hand. The Yankees could use Brad Hand. How great would it be if your quote-unquote low-leverage lefty, a guy who you bring in the 6th inning to get out that big lefty in the lineup, is a former closer. A guy with 2 30-save seasons under his belt. A guy who last year led the majors in saves, a 3-time All-Star. The Yankees should go after Brad Hand hard. Every team should go after Brad Hand. You know, it seems like lately the Indians just aren't putting a lot of effort into winning. They're trying to go with this half-assed approach of, yeah, we'll get rid of a guy or two here and there, and the core that we're keeping can go on a magical run. It doesn't work like that. You have to go all in to win a title. Look at what the Dodgers just did. They went all in to trade for Mookie Betts. When you went all in to win a title, you won the pennant. You were one game away from winning a World Series. I don't understand what the Indians are doing. Either blow this whole thing up or go all in to win a World Series, alright? If you don't think this core can get it done, that's fine. That's your opinion. But personally, I do. But if you don't, then blow the whole thing up. Moving on now to the Milwaukee Brewers, moving on from a franchise legend. Yes, that is what Ryan Braun is. He is a franchise legend. The Brewers declined their half of a $15 million mutual option, so Braun got a $4 million buyout. I understand that Braun struggled last year. He had .233, didn't get on base a lot, but the power was still there. He hit 8 home runs in 39 games. He had a .488 slugging percentage. I understand he's not getting any younger. He's going to be 37 on the 17th. So that's 2 weeks from Tuesday. But I'd have liked the Brewers to have kept him around. Hopefully, they go back and try to bring him back at a cheaper rate. I like Braun a lot. I think you need to do right by your franchise legends and keep them around. Braun still has something left in the tank, so if the Brewers want to move on from him, I think he'll get picked up pretty quickly by an American League team as their DH. Moving on now to the Tampa Bay Rays declining their options on Charlie Morton and Mike Zunino. Zunino had a $4.5 million option. I'll start with him first. It makes perfect sense to move on from him. I remember really liking Zunino in the 2012 draft. He went 3rd overall. I thought he was going to be a really good player for a long time, but he's never been able to put it together. He does hit for power, but at the end of the day, you've got to do better than a 200 average. I don't care how great your power is. A 200 average is inexcusable. A 270 on base percentage is inexcusable. Zunino also didn't do much against the Yankees or the Dodgers in the World Series. He's a good fielding catcher. I wouldn't have hated the Rays bringing him back. $4.5 million is okay for him, but there are better catchers available. If the Rays go out and make a move for a better catcher, I have no problem with this. But we all know they're not going to, because Stu Sternberg never puts any money into the damn team. As evidenced by the Rays declining their very reasonable $15 million option on Charlie Morton. I understand that Morton struggled in the regular season. In 9 starts, he went 2-2 with a 4.74 ERA. But in the last 2 seasons, he made the All-Star team. In 2017, he was a huge part of the Astros World Series winning team. He is a very good playoff pitcher, 7-3 with a 3.38 ERA. He killed the Yankees in Game 3. Tanaka laid an egg and the Yankees couldn't bail him out. And he killed the Astros too. Game 2 he was great. And Game 7, with the Rays in danger of becoming just the second team in baseball history to lose a series after being up 3-0, Morton pitches a gem. 5 2/3 innings of 2-hit shutout baseball. You have to bring this guy back. There are going to be a bunch of teams after Charlie Morton. This is ridiculous. Just give him his money. The guy was your 3rd best starter. What are you going to do now? Snell, Glasnow, Yarborough, and 2 bullpen days? Come on. Stu Sternberg needs to get off his ass and pay these guys. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of the Rays being held up as this perfect organization. A team with a low payroll, putting it all together, and going on a magical run. Alright, congratulations. They won the pennant. And they won the pennant in 2008. What have they done besides that? They've been eliminated in the ALDS. Every other year they've been in the playoffs. If Stu Sternberg really wants to put together a winner and entice fans to come to that dump Tropicana Field, or maybe he just wants to move the team. Just do it. Just move the team. But if he really wants to try to make it work in Florida, go out there and spend some money. Sign Bauer. Sign Real Muto. Bring back Morton. You have the money. Use it. This notion that Stu Sternberg doesn't have the money to bring these guys in is ludicrous. All these owners have money. They just choose whether or not they want to use it. Sternberg doesn't want to use it. It wouldn't surprise me if in a few years a Rosarena was traded. Or Glasnow. Or Snell. Nick Anderson. He's a joke. Stu Sternberg is nothing but a joke. Moving on now to the NFL and the big upset that happened yesterday. The Falcons didn't blow a late lead. They beat the Panthers by a score of 25-17. I gotta tell you though, the Falcons did not impress me. The Panthers looked like the better team. I mean, it just seemed like the Falcons' offense was dedicated to just getting the ball to Julio Jones. That was it. Just chuck the ball up to Jones and let him do his thing. I understand that when you have Julio Jones, you sometimes need to do things like that. But in a perfect world, you'd get a little more variety in your offense. Todd Gurley was dreadful. 18 carries for 46 yards. And the boneheaded play with 3 minutes left in the game to go out of bounds. You can't go out of bounds there. The Falcons are trying to run out the clock. Gurley only had a little over 2.5 yards per carry. Brian Hill looked exponentially better than him. Matt Ryan didn't have a great game. He didn't throw a touchdown. He didn't run for one, which was kind of impressive. I didn't know Ryan had that in him. Did his best Michael Vick impression. But the Falcons didn't impress me. Good win. They split the season series against their division rivals. And they got the win under the bright lights of national television. They are playing so much better now than they were under Dan Quinn. It's not even funny. But I'll tell you, I still don't think they're that good a team. I mean, the hit by Charles Harris on Teddy Bridgewater, a quarterback with injury concerns, was classless. That is as dirty can get. He deserved to be tossed. I'm glad he was. Thank God the injury isn't serious. But I'll tell you, when I saw that, it scared me. The reason why the Panthers lost was because they didn't get DJ Moore involved for the first 57 minutes or so of the game. Moore only had 2 catches. Now, they were for 55 yards, including a big 42-yard catch late. But you've got to do better than that. This guy is one of the most underrated wide receivers in the NFL. You have to get him going before you get Curtis Samuel going. All due respect to Samuel, he had a good game, he had 2 touchdowns. Matt Rule did get creative with him, but DJ Moore should be getting more run. Robbie Anderson looked okay. Mike Davis looked really good. He had 5 yards a carry. I will say, for me, my favorite moment of the game was the fake punt. Jeremy Chin, the safety, with the 28-yard run. That was really fun. I love fake punts, fake field goals, stuff like that. I understand that that's one of those things where if it works, you look smart, and if it doesn't, you look foolish. But there is something to be said for pushing the envelope. Where's Matt Rule going to go? He was just signed to a huge contract. The Panthers were 3-4 entering yesterday's game. They're not making the playoffs. Yeah, go for it. Have a little fun. It's nationally televised football. I really liked seeing that. The Panthers impressed me a lot more than the Falcons. But even then, neither team is that good. Before I get into my 3 NFL picks, I have to talk about the massive extension that Ronnie Stanley got from the Ravens. He was signed to a 5-year extension worth $98.75 million. He is getting $70.9 million in total guarantees. In terms of total value and guaranteed money, this is the richest deal for an offensive lineman in NFL history. When you look at AAV, Laramie Tunsil still has him beat at $22 million, but where it really counts is guaranteed money, and Stanley has him beat by a pretty wide margin. Having said all that, this is a fantastic move. The Ravens had to lock up Stanley. Ever since he entered the NFL in 2016 out of Notre Dame, he's been incredible. He's played over 800 snaps every season. He's never had a Pro Football Focus grade of worse than 74.8. That is insane. This guy is probably the best left tackle in the NFL. He's a better pass blocker than he is run blocker, but let me tell you, he's not a bad run blocker. You can't hate this deal. Is it a lot of money? Yes. The Ravens reset the offensive lineman market, and hopefully Mekhi Becton points to this contract and says, you know what, I'm just as good as Stanley, I want this contract. But the Ravens had to give it to him. They have to keep Lamar Jackson upright. And the Jets are going to have to keep Trevor Lawrence upright. Yes, Trevor Lawrence is still a future Jet. I don't care that he has the coronavirus. Actually, in a weird way, I was kind of, I don't want to say happy about it, but it really didn't bother me. A lot of people made a bigger deal out of that than I did. This may scare him a little bit to the point where he may not want to risk another illness or another injury, something like that. He may want to take the money sooner rather than later. So, yeah, Lawrence getting the coronavirus didn't bother me at all. But now it's time for me to make my 3 NFL picks. After starting the year 500, I am now 8-1 the last 3 weeks. Let's see if I can keep it up here. I'm going to go a little out of order here. I usually like to go chronologically with my picks, but I'm going to bounce around a little bit. You'll see why in a minute. I like the Titans -6 over the Bengals. I don't care that the Bengals are home. They can't hold a candle to the Titans. They are playing fantastic football right now. Tannehill, Derrick Henry, A.J. Brown, Corey Davis, Jonnu Smith, Adam Humphries. The Bengals just traded Carlos Dunlap. They're not going to be able to stop this Titans offense. Give me the Titans -6. As for my upset, I like the Bears to cover the 4.5 against the Saints. The Bears are home. Even without a packed Soldier Field, that Chicago weather always plays in the Bears' favor. I understand that the Bears had a really bad loss on Monday night against the Rams, but I don't think the Saints are a great team. Drew Brees doesn't look like the Brees of old. He looks really good, but he doesn't look great. This wide receiver core without Michael Thomas doesn't scare me. Traquan Smith is not a number 1 wide receiver. Neither is Emmanuel Sanders. Neither is Marquez Callaway. Their best pass catcher right now is Alvin Kamara. That isn't going to get the job done. I think the Bears are really going to limit the Saints' effectiveness. I'm not saying the Bears are going to win this thing, but I really think they're going to cover the 4.5. I could see them losing by a field goal. That wouldn't surprise me at all. And for my 3rd pick, I'm going to do it. This is one of the biggest spreads I've ever seen. But it still may be too low. You could double this spread, and it may be too low. I like the Chiefs -19.5 over my beloved Jets. I think they're going to lose by at least 3 touchdowns. I just do. What else do I need to say except it's the Chiefs versus the Jets? The defending Super Bowl champions versus a team that would struggle against a team comprised solely of people in Bellevue Hospital. And you know what? If you include the medical professionals also, the Jets are losing that game. They are a joke. They are an embarrassment to football. They only had 4 yards in the second half. Their quarterback only had 1 completion in the second half. They are an embarrassment to football. The Chiefs are going to forget they're playing an actual game. They're going to think they're in a scrimmage. It's very possible that the Chiefs could be up 21 or 28-0 before the first quarter's over. The record for most points ever scored in an NFL game is 73. Be honest. Would you put it past the Chiefs to eviscerate this Jets quote-unquote defense to a point where they give up 70 points? It's not impossible. It's really not. Give me the Chiefs minus 19.5. So my picks are Titans minus 6, Bears plus 4.5, and Chiefs minus 19.5. Before I let you go, I'll give you some Valk talk about my beloved Brooklyn Nets. They made a couple big moves. No, they didn't trade for anyone. They didn't sign anyone. We're not there yet. But they filled out part of Steve Nash's staff about as well as you could have dreamed of. The Nets brought in Mike D'Antoni and Ime Udoka to be 2 of Nash's assistants. They'll join a staff that already has Jacques Vaughn and Amari Stoudemire. I understand it's hard to get excited about assistant coaches, but this is a great move by the Nets. Nash has no coaching experience whatsoever. And the Nets pushed hard for any coach to keep Jacques Vaughn around as the lead assistant. Nash was okay with that. And that's a good job by Nash in realizing that he needed an experienced head coach by his side. But now, in addition to Stoudemire, a guy who, when he was with Nash, revolutionized the NBA with the 7 seconds or less offense, Sean Marks brought in the architect of that system in Mike D'Antoni, a guy who knows how to coach offenses maybe better than anyone in NBA history with the exception of Phil Jackson. And Ime Udoka has a lot of coaching experience. He's never gotten a chance to be an NBA head coach, but he has interviewed for jobs before. He was with the Spurs for a long time, from 2012 to 2019. He won a title with them in 2014. He was with the Sixers for a little bit, but Doc Rivers didn't want to keep him. So now Udoka goes to the Nets. Marks knows him. This guy was once Greg Popovich's right-hand man. There was a time when a lot of people said that Udoka was going to be a future NBA head coach. It wasn't a matter of if. It was a matter of when. The Nets now have 3 guys on their staff. Vaughn, D'Antoni, and Udoka, who interviewed for head coaching jobs this year. For a coach with no coaching experience, it is invaluable to surround yourself with people who have been there before. And you have 2 former head coaches and a very well-respected assistant in your ear. You also have someone who was once a really dominant player in Amari Stoudemire. How great is that to see Nash and Stoudemire together again? Haven't talked about it until now. Isn't that great to see? That made me happy when I saw that. I mean, one thing that does scare me is that the Nets aren't going to have a traditional head coach setup. It's going to be more of a committee approach. Vaughn's going to have some say. Nash is going to have some say. Durant's going to have some say. Kyrie's going to have some say. I'm sure D'Antoni and Udoka are going to have some say. I'm sure Stoudemire will too. It's possible that can blow up. Usually, you need a general to issue the orders and everyone else just follows. A committee approach usually doesn't work, but look, this is the NBA. It's a league that's governed by stars. If this is what Durant and Kyrie want, it's what they're going to get. I'm not crazy about it. Is it possible that it doesn't work out? Yes, there is a chance that Steve Nash crashes and burns. But I think this setup can work. I think there are smart people running this thing. And I really think that the Brooklyn Nets are going to win a title next year. Call me a homer if you want, but that's what I truly believe. Instant New York Jets recap comes your way on Sunday and every Sunday that the Jets play. Regular episodes of the Jacob Valk Show come your way every weekday afternoon. Tuesdays is going to be a little later. I'm going to hold it for after the NFL trade deadline. I want to see if anything crazy happens. So you can expect that around 4:30, 5 o'clock-ish. Until next time, I am Jacob Valk saying that I forgot something the other day. I must have had ambrosia.